Welcome to Kinship Cafe. I am your host, Jim Jones, and today I am joined with Lindsay White.
Hey, Jim. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
And today we're going to talk about your project, Lady Brain.
Yeah, Lady Brain Collective. That's us.
Very excited about that. And to start us off, would you like to open us up with a song?
Yeah, love to.
Right on. That was just beautiful, Lindsay.
Thanks.
Is this an original song?
Yep.
And what is this one called?
It's called Lights Out.
Okay.
It's the title track of my last full-length album. And I wrote it about my mom. It's the first song I wrote when my mom died. So it kind of tied together the whole dang thing.
Yeah. So was this pretty recently that she died?
She died in 2017. And I was working on an album at the time, which I had songs in mind and everything, but as she got sick, she was diagnosed with brain cancer, and she died of brain cancer about 2 years after her diagnosis. And so as we were going through that whole process, the songs in the album kind of started morphing around the theme of grief and loss and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's quite an ordeal to go through.
Yeah. It was.
Yeah, grief is no joke.
No joke.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like an area that we'd like to explore this evening, if that works for you. But I would like to kind of begin with what's going on with Lady Brain, and maybe we can see how these come together.
Yeah, so definitely the two are closely related. So before Lady Brain was even a thing, I was in a duo called the Lovebirds, I don't know, with Veronica May. And as my mom, was diagnosed and going through that, and I was going through that whole experience, that band that project like kind of fizzled out and died its own natural death, like no big deal. But at the same time, I was kind of starting from square one, feeling a little bit isolated, also going through this really heavy experience with my mom. And grief in that time period was really teaching me a lot about just the way I approach life and my music career. And before I was very like go, 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 forward thinking. What do I got to do next to get to the next step in my career? I wasn't even ever in the moment because I was constantly thinking about how I could get to the next moment and what billion emails I had to send out to do that. And when my mom died, it kind of really stopped me in my tracks and made me start thinking about time in a different way and start thinking about, do I want to accomplish something later or do I want to experience something now? And so as a result of that sort of shift in perception, I gathered people together at the end of last year, so the end of 2018. I asked just maybe like 10 to 15 women who were also pursuing creative careers in San Diego to come to my house. We had brunch. We talked about our experiences. Some people cried. I was one of them. And we just kind of started saying like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we had a group that shared resources and supported each other and did more than just hit that like button on Instagram every so often? Like, what if we did something a little bit more real? And it was just sort of born out of that. Really, it wasn't anything except for a brunch at my house. And then, here we are not even a year later, and we have like 100 members and did this big festival, and it's just crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Yeah. I had a chance to go to your festival, which was a lot of fun. Yeah. Great job, by the way.
Thank you. I have shout out to Catherine Beeks because she was the producer of that, and it would have not gone that smoothly without her.
Yeah. Well, I know there's a lot of work. So hats off. I get it.
It was a lot, but I'm super proud of it, and hopefully we can keep doing it. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I wish you all the luck on that
because
I had a great time. I'm sure other people will too.
Thanks.
So with the working together with this kind of renewed, let's say, focus that came about with the reality of death and how that impacts life, this is something that I've brought up a couple of times on the show, that really coming to really confront and face death is one of the things that you almost kind of have to do if you're going to figure out how to live.
Totally. I can't agree with you more. We go about our life pretty much doing anything and everything we can to avoid the fact that we're all going to die. And I always say, like, if we just talked about it a little bit more, that could be the great unifier, because it doesn't matter your race, your religion, your class, anything. Right. Like, we are all going to go through that. We all do go through that with our loved ones. And we just sort of move on business as usual and don't really talk about the way it impacts our lives. And I think if we were much more upfront about that, it wouldn't be this like scary, morbid thing. It would be this thing that we use as a tool to inform the choices that we make, the relationships that we have, all that sort of stuff. So nobody wants to go through losing a loved one or any kind of real big trauma or loss in that way. But if we talked about grief, I think we would all just be light years ahead in the way that we treat each other and approach life and our choices and the why of why we do things.
Yeah, it's the great clarifier.
For sure. Everybody says love is the glue, and that's true to an extent, but I really always, after having gone through this, I think it's really loss. Yeah. Yeah,
they kind of go together, I think, because the reason loss hurts is because of the love.
Totally.
Right? So it's all connected in strange ways. There's a Stoic phrase, memento mori, which is remember your death. And it's one of the things that they would want to keep in front of them to, like we said, clarify what's important and what am I going to do today.
Yep, exactly. How am I going to wake up and make the choices I need to feel good about myself and the people around me and the impact that I'm having on the world, whether it's small or big. Thinking about death keeping it front of mind really helps pull you back into that moment. And suddenly all those little things you were worried about and, how am I going to get here in my career and who do I need to meet or talk to or what steps do I need to take? It's just kind of like takes a back seat. Like, it's great to still be ambitious, still have goals and plans for your life and all that stuff. But really what matters is the kind of person you are and the way you treat people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So was there any things that you did or techniques, if you will, that helped you through this process?
Well, it was hairy for a while. It was really hard. Lots of anxiety. I've always had a lot of anxiety issues in my life, even since before I dealt with this grief. A little bit of depression, that sort of thing. So just processing all those emotions and trying to really feel my way through them and not avoid them, not eat my way out of them, which is something I've struggled with in my life too. Having a strong support system. My sister was going through the same thing with me at the same time, so that was a big one. My wife is incredible and helped me through all of that. And really just one thing that really helped a lot is writing down my gratitudes. That's something that I need to get back into the practice of. But my friend Jeffrey Joe, who I also lost around this time, was really big on that. He would post. Do you know Jeffrey Joe?
I don't.
He was a musician here in San Diego, really wonderful person, talented guy, and one of my best friends. And that was something he used to post every day on Facebook, was things he was grateful for. And so after he died, I started the practice of doing that every night. And there's something about that a lot of people meditate, and I think my mind's too crazy for that. But just writing down gratitude as a practice every single day really helped keep me in the moment. It didn't let my brain spiral out of control. And I need to. I've been so tired lately that I just fall into a puddle of bleh when I go to sleep. But I need to get back into that. It really helped. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up some of our good practices when we're kind of exhausted, and our life today doesn't make it easy.
Totally. And I mean, therapy, obviously, that's my pinnacle. That is the thing that I feel saved me when I was coming out, when I was going through my sexual identity crisis, I guess you could say, and all the things that I went through with my mom. We were estranged, so that's why it was such a huge thing. And even as much as I believe in therapy and tell my friends to go to therapy, I still have that same resistance where I'm I can't afford it, but making stuff like that a priority, making your own health and well-being a priority is so crucial, especially in those really deep, dark moments, because it can get away from you if you don't take the steps that will work. And part of that, I think, is knowing that I've done it in the past and it's proven to get me out of that hole, and so knowing that there is always a light at the end of the tunnel, I think, reminds me to take care of myself. Yeah.
So I just want to kind of explore part of this a little bit, because I think that there's some great things that we can take away for normal day-to-day type of things as well. Like you were talking about with the emotions or the anxiety about not fighting it but experiencing it. This is a key thing that I see a lot of people when they're talking about how to cope with these things, is to learn to acknowledge in a non-judgmental way what you're experiencing.
Totally.
Is this kind of what you were going through?
Yeah.
That practice?
Yeah, and I think that's something that I learned to do in therapy, and even though I don't go to therapy as much as I did, having gone through it weekly when I was really in the weeds taught me that I didn't have to feel so much shame about what I was feeling, whether it's guilt or anger, whatever the emotion would be, that I just really had to acknowledge it, like you said, and let it pass, knowing that it would pass, and not letting it completely take over and drive the car, but just being there's my friend guilt sitting in the passenger seat, and hopefully if I just acknowledge the presence of it, it'll go to the back seat eventually and maybe hop out of the car. But yeah, just that self-awareness and not badgering yourself for the way that you feel. I mean, I struggle with that all the time, but I know better. It's just, do I practice it all the time?
Yeah. Well, it's so easy, I think, for most people. And one of the just great tools that's come out with mindfulness becoming so much more popular and available to people is exactly kind of what we were just talking about, that when we have those ideas or thoughts or emotions that just seem to kind of pop up, if we get to the point where we can become aware of thinking, I'm aware of the fact I'm having this emotion, that we can become the observer, right? Then what we find is that they tend to go away. It's when they pop up and we try to fix it that all of a sudden we're trying to reach into our past, like, what does this mean? And all this other baggage comes along and it starts to spiral into this huge thing that if we stop trying to fix it, acknowledge it, and just non-judgmentally see it, then it has the opportunity to just, like you said, fade away or go into the back seat.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm really big on lately recognizing patterns, because if you, let's say you see a behavior in yourself that you don't necessarily like and you're aware of it, you notice it, and you say, like, what does this remind me of? Have I acted like this before, behaved in this way with another person in my past? Or did something happen in my past that would lead me down this road of making this choice or talking to a person in this way? And that, again, allows you to step outside of yourself and be like, this isn't really an isolated moment where I'm angry or this person hurt me in a way. It's just like I'm repeating a pattern that's so steeped in my DNA and my experience that I repeated over and over and over, that it really takes a lot to undo it. And so you have to, like, offer yourself that grace that you're gonna deprogram yourself over time by being aware of it and taking a moment to reflect and being like, am I really mad at this person, or am I projecting all my past experience onto them, So the more we can all do that together, I think, the less angry we'll be all the time and hurt, Right.
And it's interesting because in a way it's practicing kindness and compassion towards yourself.
Totally.
Yeah. And then that actually gives you space to have more kindness and compassion for other people.
100%, yeah.
Yeah. So, it's wonderful things we can learn as we make our way through life.
Yeah. I know, things you wish you would have learned sooner, but I guess experience is the teacher.
Well, I think for a lot of us, we just don't change until we have to, until something kicks us in the butt and says, wake up, pay attention. So, Lady Brain, women coming together. Is it only women?
Women identifying folks.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. And then you're working as more kind of a collective to help support each other. What does that look like? Like, what does that turn into?
So we kind of have like two lanes, I guess. One is sort of a private, members-only meetup thing that we do every month, where we'll take turns hosting at different houses, and we'll usually center it around a topic or have a guest speaker. We just had a speaker from GoFundMe come and talk to us about crowdfunding, and so just like kind of pooling together our ideas and resources and things that will help us along in our creative paths. And the most important thing is just being in a shared physical space together. I think that's the takeaway, because you can have online workshops and this and that, but really it's been wonderful to see somebody come in, and now it's like strangers that are coming in. It used to be all people I know, but now to have somebody come in and be kind of like skeptical, like, what am I at right now? And then they walk away and they tell me on their way out, like, this was so great, like, I'm so glad I came. And I think it's like us starving for that connection with people who are not identical to us, but they have a lot of shared experiences. So that's really one of my favorite parts of it. The public iteration is Lady Brain Presents, and that's more of a monthly showcase, and it's kind of built around the same model where a member will raise their hand and they'll say, I'm going to curate this event around either a topic that's important to me, or there's this cool venue that I know, or I want to play with these people that I've never played with before, where we'll highlight some of the work of our members and invite the community to come out and take part in it and see what we're all about, and hopefully make new opportunities and new fans for people.
Yeah.
And it's cool because different members are sort of curating their own thing. They're all different, so it's not falling into this like stale, formulaic showcase model where it's like, oh God, another, identical event. It's always different performers. It's always like our next one is centered around the topic of death and dying, actually. And I didn't plan that, but I'm all about it. One of our members, Marlo Smith, she's in a band called Golden Hound. She works, her day job is with hospice as a music therapist. And,
is that right?
Yeah, and so we're just bringing together a bunch of our members at a private house concert, and we're going to do like art and music and spoken word, kind of centered around what this topic means to everybody. And it's doing exactly what we said. It's like shining a light on this thing that people typically find a little, maybe off-putting or sad, and just saying, it doesn't have to be sad. Like, we can just connect over this, and so I'm really excited about that one. So those are really like the two main areas, and then we also have sort of like an online component where we share resources. Like, we have an online shared spreadsheet where it's like shared venue contacts or shared press contacts or just ways where we can literally take our individual lady brains and make this big digital lady brain that makes this career, a little bit easier to tackle as an independent artist.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, another one of my favorite things, so on our website we have a podcast, which is hosted by Catherine Beeks, who I mentioned. We have member-on-member reviews. So, like, let's say somebody puts out a new single, one of our members will review that member's single.
Nice.
And so just creating, like, that press opportunity out of scratch. Now they have a nice, solid press quote about their new piece of music that they can share and try to, secure other media opportunities and that sort of thing. So it's really just, like, identifying opportunities that maybe aren't there or are hard to come by, and just being like, we're going to create this for ourselves. We're not going to wait for anybody to give it to us or be like, hey, that's not fair. We're just going to plan a festival. We're going to, write a press piece on somebody's music for them. Like, and it's not just musicians. It's any creative, really.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Majority of musicians right now, but that's just, I think, because I knew a lot of musicians first.
Yeah.
But we're getting more and more visual artists and that sort of thing, photographers. So it's really just showing up for each other and not like waiting around for somebody to like give us equality, you know?
Yeah. No,
So,
I love that. That's very, very cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm really proud of it.
Well, you should be. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
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 Well, I've saw all this stirrings going on, and being somebody who's constantly coming up with things myself, I'm like, what is this? This sounds really fascinating.
Yeah.
And we happen to have a number of mutual friends, some people that are a part of the Lady Brain, and it kept coming up. Do you know Lindsay? I'm like, we're friends on Facebook, but we haven't ever actually met. So I was really glad that we finally connected, and here you are.
Me too.
Yeah, so that's I just love hearing success stories like that.
Yeah.
And it's that face-to-face community that you're building, and that support is so crucial.
Yeah.
Like, life can be really kind of brutal sometimes, the way things are right now, and anything along those lines that we can do to help bring people together in positive ways, working for positive ends, I applaud you.
Same to you. This is exactly the same kind of thing that you're doing here, and this is what the world needs. The world needs artists and creative people in its most trying times, I think.
Yeah. Well, and just finding ways to connect like we're doing here and lots of other people are doing, that's the first step, right? And like we said earlier, having that kindness and compassion for other people, that can change everything if we find ways to actually do it.
Agreed.
Yeah. So one of the other things I think that you said that you're doing through Lady Brain is also a writing book club?
So that was actually started before Lady Brain by my friend Unison Coldhurst, and she is a member of Lady Brain, but I've known her for a long, long time, and she started this songwriting book club. I think similar clubs have existed in other towns and whatnot, but she brought it to San Diego, and she's been hosting them in her house for a few years now, and I love it so much. It's like a book club, but it's songwriters, and we pick a title, we read the book, and then we write songs inspired by that piece of literature. Or like, you don't even really have to read the book. Nobody's like judging you on that. Like, you could just write it based on the back cover or something. And then we get together at her house and we share those songs with each other. And again, it's that being in a physical space with people who are critical thinkers and creative and all different level songwriters. You know, it doesn't have to be like this really polished gem of a song. It was just more like, this is what this book made me think about, and here's what I did with that. And I love art inspired by art. I think it's like one of the coolest things that you can start at one point and get to this point, just because of the experiences you've had in your life and the way you interpreted it. And here's how here's what I got out of that. And to see so many different products as a result from so many different brains, it's really cool. And so Omar and Amy from Spiritual Motels are in that book club as well. And
very cool.
Yeah,
I think the idea that we can transmit our own experiences into written word or music or visual arts is just like so fascinating to think about. You know, that I can have this thing that I can communicate in such a way that you can enter into it.
Right.
It's crazy.
I know. It's totally crazy. And it's the coolest thing about being creative or being a storyteller, is that somebody can have a completely different interpretation of something that you put out into the world just to process your own experience or observation, and then somebody takes it and makes it something completely different. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So do you have any songs that have come out of this?
So, one of the songs I've written in that club is called Some Man, Some God, Some War, and it's based or inspired by, I guess, this book called The Sandcastle Girls, not Sandpaper, Sandcastle Girls. And it's kind of, do you want me to talk about it? Or
Sure.
do you want me to wait? The book is a fictional account of the Armenian genocide. So that's like a really light read, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't know a ton about the Armenian genocide going into reading this book. And obviously, horrifying stories. And this is a fictional account. But still, learning about, the suffering, normally when I write a song inspired by a book, I relate to like a certain character or some experience, and I just like grab that little nugget and I expand and I write a song that kind of I relate to. For this book, it was really hard to relate to suffering on such a big scale because I haven't gone through anything this horrifying in my little life, thankfully. But I did relate to the idea of women being given roles that they didn't necessarily sign up for in their life, just because of the way society is structured, because of religion, or who owns the land, or who says which god we're worshiping this century, and that kind of thing. And the interesting thing about that book is there's stories and narratives from women in different social classes. And the commonality there is, they're using whatever agency they have to try to survive, essentially. And it didn't matter if they were, poorest of the poor suffering or like having quite a bit of privilege. They were still, there were certain expectations placed on them as women. And I found that to be pretty fascinating because we've been doing that since the dawn of time. We're still doing it today. And so that was one little piece that I could relate to as a woman. Maybe my suffering is different, but I have experienced these things as a woman, and I have used whatever agency that I have to try to wriggle my way out of these restrictions that society puts on you as a woman, hence Lady Brain. So that's sort of that message for that song.
Well, would you like to perform it for us?
Yes, let's do it.
Right.
She is famished, all but vanished by design.
just another fantastic piece.
Thank you.
And what is this one called again?
Some man, some God, some more.
Yeah. I like that.
Thanks.
I am secretly wishing I could like sneak a wig on and sneak into your meetings because they sound like a lot of fun. I'm afraid the beard would probably give it away. So, well, I want to come back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier, because when you're talking about the Armenian genocide and the immensity of that, which, you know, it's very hard for people like us who haven't been through something like that to understand. But we do have our own challenges and losses that we've gone through. You've talked about your mom's death earlier. And one of the things I'm also curious about is, because this is a natural topic that comes up with the question of death, is spirituality. And I was wondering if you had some thoughts on like how this impacted that, or where is that for you?
Gosh, it's such a big, hairy, ugly thing in my life, that, you know, I was raised Baptist and went to church all through my youth, and really it shaped the way that I was in the world and how I identified, and, you know, things like I didn't really think I had the option to be a gay person because it just didn't cross my mind that was like allowed, you know, and that was the root of the estrangement that I had with my mother, where we didn't speak for 6 years. And it's still to this day the reason why I haven't met my wife's parents after 6 years of being together. And so religion, unfortunately, and spirituality, you know, it's mixed up in this really unfortunate web of judgment and control, and the way that it's wedged itself negatively in a lot of relationships that were really important to me growing up, is unfortunate, because that's not what I think spirituality should be. I don't have anything against anybody believing whatever they want to believe in. I'm not really even sure I know what I believe in, but this idea that my way is the way, you know, it really kind of gets me, because it's really destroyed a lot of would-be great relationships in my life, and I deal with it to this day, you know, and it's frustrating.
Well, I think we're going through a big shift in terms of specifically religion, but spirituality more generally right now, because a lot of the traditional stories that we've told that have sustained how we think about things like morality and what's up, what's down, all that kind of stuff, have started to really get challenged on multiple fronts, where a lot of people are like, this doesn't work for me,
right?
And it hasn't. And but then what can happen is somebody finds themselves kind of like in midair, like the bottom's not there anymore, because this foundation that they thought they had is collapsed. So you've got that, which creates an interesting space of people trying to figure out what's up. But then others who are so afraid of that bottom dropping out, that they're holding on to for dear life.
Latch in.
Drawing that line in the sand and getting even more dogmatic. I mean, one of the interesting kind of responses to that, it just amazes me every time I come across it, is this whole like resurgence of flat earth stuff that you see like on YouTube, of people saying, well, look, the Bible teaches this, it's reality, you know, NASA's, you know, making all this stuff up, and you just see this like last ditch real effort to try and hold on to things during this transition. And my hope, one, here is that we can have a safe place to talk about all things that have to do with life, and spirituality is one of those things. You know, in my case as a naturalist, people sometimes wonder, well, how does spirituality fit in with that? But really the word spirit comes from the word for breath, and it has to do with life. And so it's all about, you know, things that are concerned about life are spiritual. And so that's, for me, why I think it's important that we need to be able to talk about spiritual things in all the varieties that people are wrestling with. But I really agree with you as well about this humility, right, that obviously nobody can demonstrate conclusively one thing or the other
Right.
about some of this stuff.
Right.
And so we need to have that openness.
Well, respect, really.
Respect.
It's just a baseline level of respect where you can believe what you want to believe, but you're not stamping that belief onto another person and then allowing what they do or don't believe to inform your opinion of them. I can't get on board with this idea that you're born into this world and you're worthless, and that's the part of religion that's really hard for me to, or Christianity specifically, I guess.
Right.
That's hard for me to I'm not even trying to come to terms with it. I think it's bullshit. I think you can practice whatever form of spirituality that makes you feel good, that gives you faith, that makes you, or not. Maybe you don't practice any kind of religion or spirituality, and that's okay too. But once you start imposing on somebody, then I just think it's rude. I can give you an example. I just played a show in Sacramento where I did a song about how my wife's parents don't accept us and how hurtful that is. And, a woman comes up to me after and she's like, I'm so sorry. I just want you to know that not all Christians are that way. And, I thought, how kind for her to come up and say that. And she sees that I'm hurting and she's a complete stranger. And I said, I know, I'm so glad that a lot of Christians aren't that kind of Christian. And then she launched into this whole thing, she just wanted me to know that Jesus loved me, and all I have to do is accept him as my Lord and personal Savior, and do I? And that was the first time I just looked at her and I was like, nope. And the fact that it took me 36 years to have that kind of strength to stand up to even a complete stranger and be like, that's not my truth, that's not my reality, you're not going to force it on me, you're not going to guilt me into it. So that's what we're dealing with here, Yeah. This idea, this superiority complex of I'm going to go tell this girl that Jesus loves her and everything's going to be great. Well, it's how do you even think that I believe? Maybe I don't believe in Jesus. Maybe I'm an atheist. Maybe
right.
I just told you that I'm having serious relationship issues in my family based in religion, and you're going to come up to me and tell me that Jesus loves me and that's going to make everything better if I accept him into my whatever. And that's what I'm talking about. It's just this idea that you're worth nothing unless you do X, Y, or Z. F you. I'm worth a lot. I don't need some other worldly thing to tell me that I'm worth whatever.
Well, and this is one of the challenges that you've got with any kind of organization, whether it's religious or otherwise, that says that we've got the answer to the problems, is that it becomes imperative for that organization to find the problem everywhere else with everybody but them.
Right.
Because otherwise, how are they the answer?
Right.
And so that just automatically sets up the stage for not bringing people together.
Yeah, you need an other.
Yeah. Yeah. So definitely interesting times. It's going to be fascinating to see how this unfolds. It's definitely been something that's been a big part of my journey, being somebody who is trained as a pastor and functioned in a Christian community, but then going through the transitions that I've gone through and still actually connected in Christian community, but in a very loose way, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
It is fascinating times.
I agree.
And I'm hoping that we can find ways to make peace with one another.
God, hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has just been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Did you have a song you'd like to close us out with?
Yeah, so this is called Time Is on the Way.
Time is on the way.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
It's the weight of the world wreaking its havoc. It's the state of affairs so scary it hurts. Is that venomous voice in your head automatic? Just letting you have it, making you feel like dirt. Baby, you're the damn Grand
Great song.
Thanks.
I really like that. So what is this one about?
So this actually, I have a reputation for writing really sad songs or songs about grief. And this song actually marked kind of a turning point in that process for me when the fog was kind of lifting a little bit out of that whole experience with losing my mom. And I had just gone on this cross-country tour, first cross-country tour by myself. And I was back home and I was feeling a little low and like, was that even worth it to spend all that money? And the shows didn't really go that great, and I didn't, they weren't really lucrative, and I was just like having a pity party for myself, and as we do as independent artists, and kind of had lost sight of everything that I had learned with my mom, and I started putting together this video using pictures from the tour because I was going to post like a thank you video to everyone that had come out and booked me or whatever. And I started going through these pictures that I had on my phone to add them to this slideshow. And it's like, there I am at the Grand Canyon, like for the first time seeing the Grand Canyon by myself. And like, there I am with my friend in Philadelphia, and there or Pittsburgh. And here I am in Nashville, and here I am in New York City with my wife. And here I am like experiencing Maine for the first time. And I was just like, what is wrong with you, Lindsay? Like, you think music isn't taking you anywhere. It's taking you everywhere. And, wow. Like, you don't have to be, this world-famous superstar songwriter to have an effect on people and to experience new things. And it's all about those moments and those experiences and those people. And so I just had, I had to kick myself in the pants a little bit and remind myself why I do what I do. And what it's really all about. And so I started thinking about the concept of time and how when I was going through losing my mom, my best friend, my grandpa before that, it was just like one death after the other. And I was like, stop taking things from me, time. Like, I was mad at time. And finally having sort of this epiphany that here I am on the other side of this horrific experience, and I'm having better relationships with people, and I'm gaining more perspective about life and the way I want my life to be. And so I started rekindling this relationship with time as a vehicle that could take me from these really dark places to these, lighter moments of clarity. And so it was just sort of like this love letter to time, and also like sort of like a signal to other people who are going through that kind of thing, that because we all are in some way, we're all hurting in some way. And I just wanted people to know that, if I could go through all that stuff and see the light at the end of the tunnel, and be patient enough for those changes to take place in my life, then other people who are suffering or maybe in the weeds in their personal life can hear a song like that and think, okay, maybe if I just hold on a little bit longer, do some self-care, then time will also take me out of this place. So I like this song, which is hard for me to say about one of my own songs, but I like the way that it marks a turning point in the way that I see the world, and that's what I like about it.
Well, I like it too.
Thanks.
Well, it's great to be able to work with so many talented people and help them get their music out there and share what's going on in their lives.
Thank you.
I super impressed with what you're doing with Lady Brain.
Thanks.
And I hope we get to find more ways where we can work with each other.
Yeah. I'd love to.
And thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks.
All right.
Okay.
Be well.